basically being led and having others' wills imposed upon them. They've done many experiments where you could see somebody in a blue shirt, and when they leave the room, you talk about it, and everybody says, yeah, he was in a red shirt, and you get this person agreeing, yeah, he was in a red shirt. So the influence is there from the group that you have to be wary of. But when you can get a repeatable result of an experiment through people who have no connection to each other, at least visible, that to me gives it a little bit more merit than someone saying, I was abducted by a UFO, specifically gray aliens, and they probed my ass. I mean, for that, I just don't see the likelihood.
This color of shirt thing you're talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty much saying that these people come out and they'll have the wrong color. Not
mm-hmm.
only they'll mention it, but they'll have the wrong memory,
mm-hmm.
right? So
yeah.
if you ask them a year later, they would still have in their memory the wrong color. So I mean, if you can so easily influence people's ideas and senses in that case, just like with hypnotism, when people think they're eating an orange, well, it's not an orange at all. Don't you think that all things around you are nudging your senses in such a way that it's not really that you can't trust them ever, but you don't know in which cases you can and you can't trust them. It's like with, just like I read a book about deception, and they said, for example, that if you put hand sanitizer on somebody's desk and you interview them, their opinion will come out slightly more conservative just because of the nudge. This factor of, okay, there's something that I can do to protect myself, so they'll give slightly more protective answers. I mean, if you think about all the senses you use and all these influences you get during a daytime, you're constantly being pushed in directions, and it's all unconscious. I mean, even the part of it that you do realize that is happening, if at all, is going to be extremely small. So for me, it's really hard to value, just like you said, you give it more merit. Does it mean that it has more value?
I guess that's a personal choice. I mean, what do you want to ascribe value to? Because if you believe everything people tell you, you'd never find any direction in the world. So how do you decide who to trust and who not to trust, and which senses to trust and which not to trust? There's got to be a standard there, or you don't have any direction. But, like Stabby's talking about a sense of moving and falling and time passing. And as I've said before, I think that's really nothing but an effect of the sense of balance that you get in your inner ear, which makes it really a subset of the sense of hearing. So, yes, we have those things in there, but just because they haven't described them as a subset of another sense, you can feel air pressure in your eyes. That's feeling. That's the skin sensation. That is feeling. Touch, taste, smell, sight, feeling. Or, I'm sorry, touch, let's see, what is it? Sight, smell, hearing, taste, touch. So that's a sense of touch pressure. You're feeling your flesh pushed in by something. So I think, but maybe he's right. Maybe we have 3 or 4 more senses that we have not defined yet. And that would not surprise me at all. That's exactly what I was saying. I think we're going to find out that we probably have, who knows, 30, 50 senses, and they're slowly coming about just as each one developed over evolutionary time. And we're going to have more and more come. And who really cares? Because we're going to augment them unless we destroy ourselves or nature destroys us somehow before we get a chance to. The technology is now there to augment the human brain, to add senses. We can do it. And it's getting better and better, faster and faster. X-ray vision, all that's coming. Sensing when there's a moving object around you within 30 yards through a chip in your brain, all that's coming. So, I don't know.
Do you believe that it's necessarily just personal senses that exist, or do you think that there could be something like a sense we all share, or maybe that a group shares, or just 2 people that know each other really well,
Yeah.
develop like a sort of a new sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think a broader shared sense is possible. If you're talking about what most people call conscious, I believe in it. I just don't know what it is. And they've done some research on it to show that people can connect when they're outside of each other's spaces. So I don't know.
Well, that's the thing that, I mean, I've had these talks with Stabby in chat before, and we've taken our time, and what it always boils down to in the end is that he thinks that he is his brain, and I don't think that I'm just my brain. I think I'm more than my brain. So
Mm-hmm.
the thing that, yeah, the thing that is outside my brain that I would uh, consider to be me is something that Stabby would say that I'm imagining, or my brain is just putting it out there for me to maybe understand things more easily. But I would say that it is that it is real. It's not something that I would, but I think I think we are something more than our brain. And if these senses are, if all these senses that we are using and looking for, if we only look at them at the personal level, we might be missing some others. I could
Yeah.
be sharing a sense with the tree in my garden. I don't know, but
Yeah.
I know it sounds weird, but I mean, I think it's a narrow scope if you
Yeah.
just look at personal senses.
Well, I think you're right. I think at the very least there's an electrical field or something like an electrical field that unites just about everything that connects to anything else. And what that means, though, that's where we get into crazy areas. And I think it's going to take time because we don't have the frame of reference yet to understand consciousness. I mean, we've just been picking at this for a couple thousand years now. And I think understanding something like consciousness, at least in its traditional definition, is something that may take another 15, 20,000 years of us developing our own thinking to get it. And I agree with you. I think there's nothing wrong with believing in the possibility, even the likelihood, that there's a connection that goes on beyond the five senses. Or as Stabby's saying, there are more senses than the five. That's fine. But what I don't understand is why people believe necessarily that there is something like that if they've seen no good evidence for it. Because what a psychologist would tell you is the reason you're believing there's something bigger than you outside of your brain is a sense of self-aggrandizement. We want to feel important. We want to feel like we matter, and we certainly want to feel like we go on after death. To do that, we have to either invent a sea of consciousness or an invisible God. Now, that's very much that view, but I can see why psychologists say that, because it does tend to think more than we are. So are you saying, though, that with this, do you think...
No, I don't know. I don't know. I don't have a problem saying that I don't know. That's
Yeah.
another thing I liked about the Terence McKenna, by the way.
Yeah.
So, and I can understand that it's called, it can be looked upon as something that is vague, but just like he mentioned an example that if a child who doesn't know how to communicate yet, if he sees a bird, he has this experience of the bird, and as soon as we start telling this kid that that is a bird, it takes away from the experience that the child has and puts it inside like a box. So that's the
Yeah.
same reason why I wouldn't want to call what I'm describing consciousness, because then it's going to take on a kind of a meaning that is pretty much made up by other people
Yeah.
or whatever they were taught about this word.
So you think information in its purest form is really containers and it's limiting our experiences?
I think language is.
Language, okay.
And just like you said, that what did you call language before? You said about something that it's a language.
It's very limited. Language?
I can't remember. I'm sure it'll pop into my head whenever the show stops. But there's more things in life that are like language and are behaving like language. So McKenna used to call it like code. That
Yeah.
there's code in everything. So it's really hard to not be vague, if you don't want to limit yourself,
Yeah, you're right.
you pretty much have to stay vague for it to stay the thing that you're experiencing. If you, and I think that's why McKenna had such trouble uh, using language uh, to sell, or not sell, but to tell people about his experiences. And that's why maybe he thought that some kind of visual language would be better. And maybe virtual reality is going to be that. Maybe we're going to be able to really see what somebody means by stepping into their virtual reality that they built, so they can exactly make it like they're experiencing it, and you can
Yeah.
see it in the exact same way that they're seeing it, you know?
Yeah.
Would be interesting. It's not something I'd be afraid of. I mean,
Well, you're not afraid to say I don't know. I'm the same way. My religion is I don't know. But Stabby, who's a big fan of Richard Dawkins, said something interesting here, because Richard Dawkins would disagree with him on this. He said the brain is gray goo. Well, let's go back to what he said before that. He said he's talking about the difference between the mind and the brain. And there was a debate between Richard Dawkins. No, it wasn't Richard Dawkins. It was somebody else. But it was one of the hardcore skeptics. So they kind of share the same wavelengths, arguing with Deepak Chopra. And he said, the skeptic said, no, you don't have a mind. You have what's in your brain, and that's it. Everything you think or imagine or feel that even feels like it might trickle outside of your personal body is part of your brain's production, so you don't have a mind. And Deepak Chopra was saying, yes, you do have a mind. I mean, how can you prove it? I don't know, but I often question why we want to believe in things that we can't be sure of, and why we don't believe more in the things that we can be sure of. Even though I question whether or not our senses are entirely accurate, it's the repeatability that gets me, that starts to get me believing when I see these experiments. And here's something interesting that Stabby said. Tell me if you agree with this, RD. He said, you don't just live behind your eyes and your whole body. Example, if you grab something hot, you will pull your hand away before you are even aware of the pain. Well, that depends, because what you're talking about there is if you pull your hand away from something hot because you see it and you know it's hot, that's nothing but operant conditioning. I mean, that's one of the basics B.F. Skinner taught in behavioral psychology. If you have your eyes closed and you have no idea the thing's hot, you're not going to pull your hand away until you feel pain. You have no reason to. So I think he's talking about two different things there. One is operant conditioning, and the other one is reaction. But I think we can all...
I understand that science, and in this case, the advocate of science, Stephen McCarthy, he has an explanation for anything that I would put outside of my brain. And I think that's good. I mean, that's an idea that I can consider and think about. I mean, it's not like I dismiss these things or blindly accept others, but you mentioned Deepak Chopra, and I'm not a fan of him necessarily, but I do have a book by somebody that Stabaton just mentioned, which is Rupert Sheldrake, and on the cover is a comment by Deepak Chopra, pretty much naming Rupert Sheldrake the new Einstein. Well, I wouldn't go that far, but he has this idea about morphic resonance, that there is a history in a history in matter, which
I've heard about that.
Yeah, so you could pretty much say that matter has mind,
has a memory. So, you mean, right?
Yeah, it's where Sheldrake thought of this term habit before McKenna took it over, because those two are friends. And this habit is the kind of idea that matter has a memory, yeah. And it's not that I'm saying that this is necessarily true, but it does make sense, in my opinion, it does make sense to think that we are drawing experience from something else than just our personal experience, but also from the personal experience of others. Yeah. And even from, it's just like if somebody evil is in a room, you know, and they leave that room and you come into that room, you could feel that guy's presence because he influenced